Welcome. We're here for our deep dive, bringing you the key geopolitical events shaping Europe this past week. We'll be looking closely at security, alliances, and some significant political shifts.
That's right. Our aim today is really to give you a clear, factual overview of these events, looking at the potential impacts, local, national, international, but, importantly, without creating undue alarm.
We want you to have the context to form your own informed view.
Exactly. We've sifted through quite a range of sources to piece this together.
Now, before we dive in, we do want to acknowledge our sponsor, ProWave AI, for their support, sponsor read. And just to mention, this analysis, drawing from numerous traditional news outlets and social platforms like X, is powered and generated by Stylo News, the AI-driven news application.
Okay, so where should we begin? There's quite a lot happening domestically across Europe.
Let's start then perhaps with Ireland. Quite a shift there.
Oh, definitely. Catherine Connolly securing the presidency with, 63% of the vote? That's a huge mandate.
63%. And her platform.
Yeah.
Quite specific, wasn't it?
Very specific. Progressive, anti-NATO, staunchly pro-Palestinian, and explicitly advocating for Irish reunification. It's quite a statement from the electorate.
Winning by that much suggests a real determination, perhaps, to stick to that traditional neutrality. But what does that mean nationally, especially within the EU context?
Well, it creates immediate tension, doesn't it? Locally, it reinforces those anti-militaristic policies. But at the EU level, it really pushes against the current trend towards more military integration, more defense spending.
So it could complicate things for Brussels.
It certainly could. Complicate EU defense initiatives, challenge that desire for a unified military front. It's a clear divergence.
Okay, moving from political mandates to, well, political polarization, we saw that intensify with some high-profile judicial actions, particularly in Turkey and France.
Yes, in Turkey, the Kasusluk espionage investigation. It's a charge that, often carries political weight. And it led to the arrest of Istanbul's mayor, Ekrem İmamoğlu.
Along with his campaign director and a media executive, I believe.
That's right. And the reaction was swift. The opposition immediately called it politically motivated.
Designed to destabilize a rival.
Precisely. That's the accusation. It sparked more public demonstrations, deepened that divide over judicial independence. It really looks like using the legal system as a political tool, and the sources suggest the public is quite aware of that possibility.
Contrast that then with what happened in France, a historic moment where the system held a former leader accountable.
We're talking about former President Nicolas Sarkozy beginning his 5-year prison sentence for corruption, specifically related to illegal campaign financing.
And the source of those funds is key here, often overlooked.
It is. Funds linked back to Muammar Gaddafi's regime in Libya. The conviction itself is huge. It sends a powerful message that even former heads of state aren't above the law, especially concerning foreign financial influence.
It certainly changes the perceived risks for high-level politicians everywhere. Okay, these domestic situations show some clear fault lines. Let's look at Central Europe. Now we've got almost opposing political outcomes playing out. Liberal resilience versus populist fragmentation.
Well, the Netherlands provides a bit of maybe breathing room for the liberal center. The centrist D66 Party won, led by Rob Jetten.
He's set to become the country's youngest and first openly gay prime minister, correct?
That's right. And this result, it pushes back against that narrative of an unstoppable far-right surge that many were predicting.
So a stabilizing result for the EU's core, perhaps. But almost at the same time, the Czech Republic moves quite differently.
Exactly the opposite, really. The new Czech coalition government is led by Andrej Babiš's populist ANO party.
And the coalition partners are significant, too.
Very. You have the EU-opposed Motorists Party and the Freedom and Direct Democracy Party, SPD, which is openly anti-NATO and anti-EU.
So what's the takeaway when you combine those anti-EU and anti-NATO elements in government?
It signals a strong pushback against transferring national sovereignty, a clear prioritizing of, perceived national interests over EU cohesion, and for NATO. It introduces a potential fracture on that eastern flank. You literally have members in government who campaigned against the alliance itself.
Right. And one more domestic point before we move on. Serbia. Unrest there seems to have forced the government's hand.
Yes, President Vučić announced early parliamentary elections. This comes after more than a year of sustained protests demanding reform and accountability. It's a direct response to public pressure.
But there's external pressure too, isn't there?
There is. The European Parliament is pushing Serbia hard to align with EU sanctions against Russia. So you have this convergence of domestic discontent and external pressure on foreign policy alignment.
Okay. These internal shifts inevitably spill onto the international stage. Let's pivot now to the evolving security landscape. How are these political choices playing out in military terms?
Well, the first thing raising eyebrows is the U.S. troop repositioning. The U.S. announced plans to reduce its military presence in Eastern Europe.
Specifically around 800 troops from Romania and planned cuts elsewhere, too.
Yes, about 800 from Romania, with reductions also planned in Bulgaria, Slovakia, and Hungary. Now, 800 troops might not sound like a game changer strategically.
But the symbolism is potent.
Exactly. It sends a potentially worrying signal to allies about the long-term U.S. commitment. Romania's reaction was immediate, announcing plans to strengthen NATO's overall presence on its soil to compensate. They're doubling down on their commitment.
And there was a communication issue within NATO itself related to this.
A significant one. The Polish Ministry of Defense reported receiving no prior notification about potential reductions on their territory. If a key ally like Poland is caught off guard.
It suggests a gap in communication.
A gap that's perhaps more concerning than the actual number of troops involved. Alliance cohesion relies heavily on trust and transparency. This doesn't help.
And adding to the tension, we saw a physical manifestation of violation of NATO airspace.
We did. Russian military aircraft, an Su-30 fighter and an Il-78 tanker, flew into Lithuanian airspace over Kybartai. Only for about 18 seconds, but
18 seconds can be a long time in that context. German defense experts certainly didn't see it as accidental.
no, they didn't. Roderick Kieswetter described it as deliberate war preparation, specifically aimed at gathering intelligence on NATO's air defense response times, their capabilities. It's a probe.
And it highlights the vulnerability of that specific region. We should probably clarify for listeners what the Suwalki Corridor is and why it's so critical.
Yes, absolutely. The Suwalki Corridor, or Suwalki Gap, is a narrow strip of land, maybe 65 kilometers wide, connecting Poland and Lithuania. It's NATO's only land link to the three Baltic states, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania.
And its location is key.
Critically key. It's squeezed between the heavily militarized Russian territory of Kaliningrad to the west and Belarus, Russia's close ally, to the east. Any hostile move into that corridor could effectively isolate the Baltic states from the rest of NATO by land.
So, probing near that vulnerability, it makes the German assessment sound very serious indeed.
It does. And this tension is now bringing the nuclear aspect of deterrence back into the open conversation.
We're hearing calls for NATO to adapt.
Yes, Finland's President Alexander Stubb explicitly called for NATO to adapt its strategy for a new era of nuclear competition. And perhaps more strikingly, both Poland and Finland have openly expressed interest in potentially hosting U.S. nuclear weapons.
Why make that public request now?
It seems like a direct signal to Moscow, a way to counter Russia's own strategic advantages, especially the tactical nuclear weapons reportedly based in Kaliningrad. They're saying, we're prepared to match escalation with deterrence.
And alongside these tensions, we're seeing new security partnerships forming, extending reach beyond the Atlantic.
Look at Japan. Their Atlantic Eagle mission deploying 8 aircraft, 180 personnel for joint exercises with NATO countries in North America and Europe. That's a significant strategic extension.
Linking the Indo-Pacific and Atlantic theaters.
Exactly. The lines between global security challenges are blurring very quickly.
Okay, let's turn now to segment 3. Looking at the decision makers, the competing perspectives, and the potential courses of action, the statements coming out this week show really starkly different views on war and peace.
On one end, you have some very aggressive language. Belgium's defense minister, Theo Franken, publicly threatened to, quote, obliterate Moscow if Russia attacks NATO. He dismissed Putin's nuclear threats as bluffs.
Obliterate Moscow. It's an
Yeah.
unusually strong language for a defense minister. Is that calculated policy signaling or just rhetoric?
It's certainly jarring rhetoric. It aims to project extreme resolve, perhaps, to counter Russia's nuclear narrative.
Yeah.
But then you contrast that with a more measured, containment-focused stance.
Like France's military planning.
Precisely. French General Fabien Mandon stated France is actively preparing its military for a potential violent Russian test on European soil. The time frame mentioned was within the next 3 to 4 years.
So not a threat, but a strategic assessment and preparation.
Exactly. It signals that Paris views a direct conflict scenario as a real, near-term possibility that requires serious resource allocation and planning.
Meanwhile, that skeptical view from parts of Central Europe continues to challenge alliance unity especially regarding Ukraine.
Yes, Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orban called Polish PM Tusk's policies war hawkish. He's advocating Hungary's own path, focusing on peace and sovereignty as he defines it.
And strategically, Hungary is reportedly trying to form a new bloc.
That's the report pushing for a new EU alliance with Slovakia and the incoming Czech government, a bloc explicitly skeptical of strong military and financial aid to Ukraine.
If that grouping solidifies, how damaging could it be for EU policy?
It could create a major internal obstacle. It would directly challenge the unified front the EU has tried hard to maintain regarding Ukraine support. It could really fracture that unity.
Now, looking at direct support for Kiev, money is still flowing through certain channels, like the PRL initiative.
Right, NATO's purchase of U.S. weapons initiative. Finland just committed $100 million to buy U.S. arms for Ukraine. Using PURL, they joined Spain, Norway, Canada using this route.
It helps bypass some domestic legal hurdles on aid.
Essentially, yes. But the bigger financial question, using frozen Russian assets that remain stuck.
Why the delay there?
The EU postponed decisions again. It seems to be a mix of complex legal disagreements between member states and very specific concerns, particularly from Belgium, about liability.
Liability, meaning they fear being sued by Russia later.
That seems to be the concern. If the assets are used, Belgium worries it could be held financially responsible if Russia were to successfully challenge the seizure in court down the line.
And this legal hesitation is pushing European leaders towards alternatives.
It appears so. Sources indicate leaders are quietly working on a plan B, ways to support Ukraine's security, even if U.S. aid becomes less reliable due to, say, political changes in the U.S.
Signaling a move toward greater European self-reliance.
It certainly points in that direction. A structural shift, perhaps?
And how does Russia frame all this European activity?
Well, according to their foreign intelligence chief, Sergei Naryshkin, NATO is the one preparing for war against Russia. This, from their perspective, justifies Russia's military posture.
And their stated plan.
To continue hostilities until they perceive defeat isn't possible, while leveraging support from partners, particularly Chinese technology, and reportedly even North Korean troops.
Let's move now to analyzing the discourse itself. What are we seeing in traditional media sources and on social media?
Traditional media coverage is definitely showing clear alignments. For instance, sources like Turkey's Bergen newspaper were supportive of Ireland's new progressive president, Catherine Connolly, focusing on her anti-militarism.
While others focused on accountability.
Yes, 24 Canal, for example, detailed the Sarkozy conviction, emphasizing the legal consequences of high-profile corruption. And we saw strong rebuttals of Russian narratives, too.
Like on the airspace violation.
Exactly. Lithuania's 15 and Ems.lt pushed back firmly against Russian explanations. Ukrinform consistently highlights the risks of a Russian victory for wider European security. Conversely, Russian outlets like RAA Novosti focus on perceived U.S. inconsistencies or weaknesses.
Okay, turning to social media, the X platform, what's the general sentiment there?
Overwhelmingly negative, actually.
No.
Across the topics we've discussed, sentiment runs between 50% and 70% negative.
What's driving that negativity?
Primarily anxiety about escalation. You see a lot of comments like, NATO's poking the bear, reflecting real public fear that aggressive stances could spiral into wider conflict. Political instability, like concerns over far-right gains, also contributes.
Where is the debate most heated?
Hashtags related to hashtag NATO and hashtag elections show the highest polarization. People are directly linking internal European politics to global security risks. But beneath that division, there's a common thread emerging.
Which is it?
A kind of broad, weary skepticism about traditional institutions. Doubts about the EU's ability to act decisively, or NATO's ability to stay cohesive. And this is often tied to frustration over economic pressures, which makes debates about defense spending even more charged.
Right. So finally, let's look ahead. Continuing developments, what should you, our listener, be watching for in the near future?
Well, on the immediate political front, keep an eye on November 11th, 2025. That's when Catherine Connolly officially takes office in Ireland. Her first moves will really test Ireland's diplomatic stance within the EU.
And the Czech government.
Yes, we need to see the final shape of Andrej Babis's coalition, and, crucially, their specific policy commitments on NATO funding and EU sanctions. That will become clear soon.
And on the alliance cohesion front.
The key thing to watch is that potential Hungary-Slovakia-Czech Republic alliance. If that skeptical bloc actually forms and coordinates policy, it could seriously fracture EU unity on Ukraine. Watch the leaders' statements closely there.
And militarily.
Monitor the ongoing talks about additional NATO troops in Romania, post-U.S. withdrawal. Also, keep track of the tempo of NATO military exercises on the eastern flank, especially in the Baltics. And remember that longer-term timeline, France's preparation for a potential Russian test over the next 3 to 4 years. That's a strategic posture to watch unfold.
We certainly hope this deep dive has helped bring some clarity to these complex and interconnected events. This multidimensional analysis, synthesizing media reports and social sentiment, was powered and generated by Stylo News.
Stylo News is an AI-powered application available for your mobile device or computer. It allows you to download and customize your own personal intelligence-style briefings.
Drawing from hundreds of traditional news sources plus the X platform, it delivers deep, timely insights on the topics you choose, often in under 60 seconds.
You can get AI-powered news on demand, tailored just for you. We really encourage you to subscribe to Stylo News today. Just visit www.stylonews.com.
That's STYLONEWS.com. And now, just shifting our tone for a moment, thank you for joining us for this analysis. It's always valuable to work through these sources together.
It is indeed. Please feel free to reach out and suggest topics for future deep dives. And do follow Stylo News on your preferred social media platforms for ongoing updates.
Until next time, perhaps consider this. If European unity on Ukraine seems increasingly reliant on steady U.S. aid, what does that quiet Plan B we mentioned truly signal about Europe's future strategic autonomy? With, or perhaps without, the same level of U.S. engagement?
A significant question to reflect on.
We wish you well.